It's difficult really to explain what it is to be together as a family for the first time. Just wonderful. It's such a shame that good news, and especially good news about young people, is so often forgotten in this world. And all we ever read about are the few rotten eggs. And yet there are so many young people out there trying their damnedest, trying their hardest to be able to get on and to build constructive lives, and they never really get recognised for it.
His mother was the United Kingdom's much-loved Queen for over 70 years, and since her death, his eldest brother has taken to the throne. But what do we really know about the Queen's youngest son? The Queen's fourth child had a great deal of autonomy over his future compared to his siblings. He did not have a path laid out for him in the same way that his eldest brother, now King Charles, had. Like many of the other royals, Edward has endured public scrutiny and criticism. Despite this, he has emerged as one of the most hard-working and well-respected figures of the monarchy. Edward and his wife Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, mainly stay out of the limelight. His dedication to the monarchy and warm personality have made him a favoured child amongst his parents and the general public. Prince Edward was born on the 10th of March in 1964 and is the youngest child to the late Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. The Duke of Edinburgh broke royal tradition and witnessed Edward's birth. He held the Queen's hand as Edward was born. Some believe this is why Philip and Edward had such a warm and loving relationship. During King Charles III and Princess Anne's childhood, Queen Elizabeth was remarkably busy with royal duties, which included travelling overseas for long periods. This meant that the Queen was unable to spend much quality time with her oldest children during their formative years growing up. Prince Edward and his brother Prince Andrew, Duke of York, were born many years after their older siblings. In fact, Edward is nearly 16 years younger than Prince Charles. Just like his siblings, a governess was appointed to look after Prince Edward. However, his parents were much more involved in his upbringing than they were with his older siblings, which naturally created a strong bond between Edward and his parents. The young prince certainly had a royal upbringing, and at just 2 years old, he learnt how to ride a pony. Edward was quiet in comparison to his brother Prince Andrew, and it was reported that he would be the target of bullying by his older brother, who would often throw tantrums. In school, Edward excelled in sports and drama, and often outperformed his older brother. Edward attended Gordonston School in Scotland, the same school that his father attended in his youth. The prince's bubbly personality and interest in extracurricular activity meant that he performed well at school. He was even elected as the school's head boy. Edward studied English, history and politics for his A-levels and received the grades C for English and D for history and politics. Despite receiving lower grades than required for admission, Edward went on to study at Jesus College, Cambridge. Initially, there was a hostile reaction from some students, as Edward was accepted into Cambridge with much lower A-level grades than usually expected of students.
Prince Edward was 10 minutes late for his first day at college. Even though officials at Jesus say he's going to be treated just like any other student, far from being told off, the prince was warmly met by the master of the college, Sir Alan Cottrell, and his wife, Lady Cottrell. Other students who had to come in round the back looked on, as did the man who'll keep him on time from now on.
However, the other students warmed to him, and he engaged in many different extracurricular activities while at university. This included the university's RAG events. During one of these events, students had a race where they crawled on their hands and knees.
Hopefully this will be the first and last time that my birthday will fall on Rag Day, let alone Rag Week. It's been very tiring. Anyway, you're in good company today. You have probably the most professional crawlers in the world standing in front of you. I've been waiting to say that all week. Tighten your nappies, fasten your safety pins, take a firm grip on your dummies. I will start you. Are you ready? Ready to stand by the balloons? For the greatest crawl in the world, on your marks, crawl!
He left university with a 2:2 undergraduate degree in history. After graduating in 1986, Edward joined the Royal Marines. However, he dropped out of the commando course after just 3 months.
The news was received with natural disappointment that His Royal Highness had come to this decision. But I would like to say that we respect that decision. We respect that decision. We fully understand his reasons. And speaking personally for all ranks of the Commando Training Centre Royal Marines, we would wish him the very best of good fortune in the future.
Was the problem a physical one?
I'm glad you asked me that question. The problem was not a physical one. I have talked to Major Bancroft, his OC, about this, and we were well aware of his progress in training. He was doing well in his initial training, and he had all the physical equipment and acumen to have passed training in the Royal Marines. Satisfactorily, perhaps well.
So what actually happened this morning?
Prince Edward came and said goodbye to his batch officers in the officers' mess, and then he went and said goodbye to the other officers in the officers' mess, and we shook him warmly by the hand, and we wished him very well, and he wished us well.
This afternoon, Colonel Moore addressed a morale-boosting meeting of staff here. The Marines, he said, will soldier on. Prince Edward's future uncertain, but sure to be the subject of much speculation in the weeks ahead. Vernon Mann, News at 10 at the Commando Training Centre.
A few months after leaving the Marines, Edward produced the charity TV show It's a Royal Knockout. Edward encouraged members of his family to dress in period costumes and act as captains for a celebrity tournament at Alton Towers. The royal captains were Prince Edward, Princess Anne, Prince Andrew, and his then-wife, Sarah Ferguson.
Prince Edward helping to organise this major charity event. It's something he got involved in by chance, and he persuaded the other members of the royal family
it might be a
to
nice
take
idea for a
part.
contestant to get one, is it?
It took quite a lot to convince me to begin with, and then after that, then I approached them, and the idea was actually quite easy to put forward. And the four captains are four captains who are non-competing. So they're not actually competing in the game, so there's no division between the captains, and they don't get involved in the sort of the competitive side of it, the sort of the nitty-gritty element.
Has there been much jesting in the family about which team might win?
Not yet. Not yet. But I should think as the time gets closer and as the teams are finalised and balanced, and then I think there probably will be maybe a few odds laid on.
Do you have any particular skills? Are you good at balancing things on your head or handling awkward objects?
I suppose so. I don't know. I've never done it before. I mean, if I was taking part, I'd be exactly the same boat as everybody else who's taking, any other team members. I mean, wherever they come from, whether they're from sport or music or film, television, whatever, they're all in the same boat because they won't have done anything like this before. So naturally, they're all slightly worried as to what games they'll be taking part in. But having said that, they'll be in exactly the same boat as whoever on the opposing teams are involved in that, because they'll have never done anything like it before in their lives. Probably never again.
Your father, the Duke of Edinburgh, must be rooting for you as you're supporting his charity.
Possibly, yes.
Only possibly?
Only possibly, because there's also the World Wildlife Fund, you see. So
He's keeping a distance.
yes, he's keeping quite a neutral role in this.
The Tudor book is have you at 6-4 against.
Well, that sounds pretty good odds. That sounds pretty good.
But it looks a very, very strong team, laden with, I see, Olympic athletes like Steve Cram, Tessa Sanderson, Sarah Hardcastle. How do you account for this apparent ringing of your team?
No, not at all. No ringing at all. No, it was just the way the cookie crumbled.
We shall now move on then. Good luck!
When his press conference began, he was still joking.
First of all, I have to apologise if I go to sleep at the middle of this.
He went on to thank the organisers and all the participants of the special It's a Knockout competition, and then said how much his own family had enjoyed taking part.
And I know the captains have enjoyed themselves. I only hope that you've enjoyed yourselves. Have you? Well, thanks for sounding so bloody enthusiastic. What have you been doing in here all day?
May well ask.
Have you been watching it? Yeah. What did you think of it? Thanks.
The prince considered it the most extraordinary day in his life. Prince Charles and Princess Diana chose not to get involved in the event. The public often speculated on what Edward's opinion of Diana was.
Well, Diana and Edward's relationship is a relationship we don't really know much about. He is a very quite shy, private and reserved person, and I think he perhaps felt that she was taking too much of the limelight from other members of the royal family. He sees it very much as a team operation, reporting up to the CEO, and I think there was a danger that people felt that Diana was taking too much of the limelight.
Prince Edward initially wanted to balance his own career goals with his duty to the crown. He always had a passion for the arts, and growing up, he enjoyed theatre and performance.
He acted in something called Cambridge University Light Entertainment Society. He started off running his own production company and working in the theatre. And I think that remains still a very strong love of his.
After leaving the Marines, Edward commissioned Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice to create the musical Cricket for his mother's 60th birthday celebration.
So worthy of the crown's acclaim, and although protected in their regions never, batsmen know the dangers of the summer.
Consequently, Edward was offered a job as a production assistant at Andrew Lloyd Webber's theatre company, the Really Useful Theatre Group.
Today, reporters wanting to know what the prince would actually do got the answer from his new boss over the stage door intercom.
It's the lowest rung on the learning process of working in theatre, and he will have no status whatsoever. We will not be using him in any PR capacity, purely as an employee to learn the business.
And eventually created his own television production company, Ardent Productions. In 1987, he said, "I love the razzmatazz of show business. It's a wonderful world of fantasy and make-believe."
So can we just ask you about your new job? What are you hoping to be doing?
I hope you're doing.
What is your new job?
Television programs.
And what will you be doing personally?
Personally, trying to run the team and trying to find the ideas and in the long term actually producing as well.
What kind of production?
What are your chances for success? Well, very good, I think. We've got some good ideas.
Will you be using your name, your royal connections to get business?
No. So can you move over this way, sir, please?
What kind of productions do you do?
It doesn't work like that.
What sort of program are
You might think that. It's to my disadvantage, not to my advantage.
What kind of productions are you going to produce?
What sort of program ideas have you got, sir?
Well, I'm not going to tell you that, am I? That's
It was worth a try.
I'm early. That's what time it is.
Anything else?
Okay. Thank you very much.
So you're not carrying a business card, are you, sir?
So I've probably got one somewhere, but I'm not too sure I'll be able to find it below.
Edward set up Ardent Productions in 1993. He stated that the name stood for ambition, motivation, and strength.
Your own job, you've got this production company going now. Do you find yourself fulfilled with that? Is that a role that gives you great pleasure and satisfaction?
Yes, it does. I mean, obviously, you know, being able to come up with ideas and turn them into realities is always a satisfying experience. And, you know, the more that we are able to do, the easier it becomes. But there's, you know, there are always swings and roundabouts and ups and downs and positives and, you know, negatives. And obviously, you know, having to go through these particular ordeals is always the downside quite often with these things. But no, it is fulfilling. It is good fun, especially when you can make programs of, you know, what I think of this particular quality and standard.
One of the most successful shows created by Ardent Productions was Edward on Edward, a documentary which explored the controversial life and abdication of his uncle, Edward VIII.
He was very bitter that Wallis Simpson wasn't allowed to be Royal Highness, Her Royal Highness. Do you think that was a wrong decision?
I don't think he was bitter. I think he was deeply disappointed. I think more than anything else, he wanted her to be his equal, you know, once in marriage. The whole decision about the title, whether or not the family were going to attend the wedding, or the possibility of a job, or indeed him coming back to the country, they were all wrapped up in this same policy decision to try and distance him as far as possible. And that was taken really in consideration of the massive public opinion against Wallis at the time. So, right or wrong, it happened.
Do you think it was right then?
Looking back at it and looking at everything else, I think they probably were right.
People are bound to draw parallels with things that are going on now in the matter of titles, like Royal Highness for the Princess of Wales, of course.
Yes.
Do you think that one should draw any lessons from history?
Well, it's a completely different case. Whether you draw lessons or not, it's a completely different case. It's a different set of circumstances altogether. I mean, what happened back in the 30s were a set of circumstances which have never been repeated since, and God forbid that they ever should. But you basically had the king declaring his intention to marry a divorcee, somebody who's actually already married to her second husband. The public knew nothing about the liaison, so there was an enormous shock factor, and it was very difficult for them to reconcile the king's choice with, you know, once he made it. Thus the story comes full circle. It was from Windsor that the Duke started on his road to exile, and it was to here he returned 35 years later to be buried. But it was only after the Duchess died in 1986 that his expectations were at last fulfilled. For down there, in the shadow of Queen Victoria's and Prince Albert's mausoleum, the Duke and Duchess of Windsor lie side by side in a quiet corner of England, equals at last in the country he loved, their exile over.
Didn't you say you didn't expect to make any programmes touching on the royal family itself? Have you changed your mind about that?
No. What we said was that it would never be the staple diet of Ardent Productions. But we never said categorically that we wouldn't make programmes. And we take every case as it comes. We felt in this particular case, it was a very important story to tell, if it could be told in the right way. And, you know, by being able to get permission to use and have access to the Royal Archives and the primary sources, we were able really to bring this particular programme a look and a feel and an integrity, which we think is very valuable. And what I found so fascinating about it was that everybody has assumed the abdication was the tragedy. It's not. It's really what happened afterwards, and the tragedy of the family being, you know, effectively split asunder. What was a very close family. You know, all the children had grown up very closely together, so when one of them was effectively forced out, there was a huge, you know, sort of dilemma going on where, you know, I mean, the king especially wanting to try and, you know, provide some form of comfort to his brother, and yet public opinion, official policy, you know, saying that he couldn't. And that is the tragedy of this story for me and what went on afterwards.
How does your family feel about you doing all this now, delving into the archives, bringing much of the bitterness and the sadness to the surface, there must have been some of them who were not keen on the idea.
No, everybody was actually very supportive. You know, I think it was important that this particular programme in this particular year was made and was made properly. That we had the opportunity to go back to the primary sources, to really get down to the, you know, the true basis of where a lot of the stories have come from, where this whole episode took place. To be able to go back to the original, you know, people who actually knew them, the primary sources in all cases, and go back to the places. That was the most important thing. That's what really makes this programme different from all the others.
The company drew losses every year that it operated, except for 1 year where Edward did not draw a salary.
It takes a long time to be able to gain people's confidences. It takes a long time, you know, to develop the projects to a standard at which people, you know, will accept them. And undoubtedly, you know, being, in a sense, who I am and the company that we are, no commissioning editor wants to commission something that they think is just going to be of a mediocre standard. They want the best. If Ardent is going to produce it, then they want the best. So the pressure is on us to be able to come up with almost better than average programme ideas before we even start. And we took that really into consideration, and we developed our business plan on the basis it was going to take a minimum of 3 years for this company to be basically up and running, and you know, because it's just a long lead time. First year is development, second year is production. Now into our third year, we're actually beginning to see the product coming onto the screens, and that's the most satisfying element of it.
In September 2001, a two-man Ardent film crew went against industry guidelines by allegedly invading the privacy of Edward's nephew, Prince William.
Last year, an Ardent camera crew was caught filming Prince William at St Andrews University, breaching a media agreement to respect his privacy.
It's been a fantastic day.
Despite this, Prince Edward recently asked Prince Charles for help in a documentary on his brother's relationships with Princess Diana and Camilla Parker Bowles. His brother was said to be taken aback.
This reportedly angered Charles. However, the brothers eventually made up and are perfectly amicable now. After 9 years, the company folded, with assets reduced to just £40. On the year of the Queen's Golden Jubilee, Edward decided to concentrate on his public duties and commit himself to royal activities.
Thank you very much indeed. Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I thought I'd come and stand over here, give everybody who's got a crick in the neck looking that way a bit of relief. The opportunity for me to set up and run my own company has got to have been the biggest challenge that I have ever faced, and yet has turned out to be enormous fun, immensely rewarding, and full of surprises. Yet I always knew in the back of my mind that one day things would have to change. Well, that day has come, and it's not just for me, but also for my wife. And it's quite obvious in this year, the Golden Jubilee, that we are required more than ever to support the Queen and to help my family shoulder some of the increasing responsibilities and workload into the future. Now, my wife has already ceased her day-to-day involvement in the management of her company, and I will cease my day-to-day involvement at the end of this month, when I will step down as Ardent's Director of Production and Joint Managing Director. And when we've filled our current obligations, we will cease to have any connections with our companies, and then we'll all be free to pursue our own courses.
I think they realised that the only way they could make this work was to be full-time working royals, which of course the royal family needed. They needed people from a younger generation, people who could pick up the slack. There's huge demand for royals to open things and be patrons of organisations. And I think one of the problems at the moment is there's just not enough royals to go around for all the jobs that are required.
Prince Edward is the only child of Queen Elizabeth II that has not been through a divorce. He has been married to his wife, Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, for over 23 years.
So, there's one not paying any attention. Right, okay.
Mad? My picture editor.
Your picture editor, that's all he wanted, was it?
God, sir, just this one.
Well, Sophie and Edward met really through her work doing PR. She was promoting a real tennis match in which he was playing, They had a long courtship. They didn't actually marry until 1999.
No, it's just, I mean, it's impossible for anyone else to understand, you know, why it has taken me this long, but I don't think it would have been right before, and I don't think Sophie would have said yes if I'd said before, and hopefully by the fact she did say yes, I must have got the timing right, so...
Sophie, I think, struggled with royal life. Part of this 5-year courtship, she was actually living with Edward at Buckingham Palace. The royal family, I think, had learnt the lessons of both Sarah Ferguson and Diana and the difficulties of integrating into the royal family as an outsider. And so she was sort of being groomed for the job, and also to make sure she was up to it, wanted to do it. But of course, this was a period where there were problems within the marriage of the Prince of Wales and Diana. Fergie and Andrew were separating and then divorcing. Princess Anne divorced from her husband and remarried. So there was a huge turmoil. We, of course, had the Windsor fire, which raised questions about the royals paying tax and what was private and what was public, the cost to the taxpayer of their security. So there were a lot of controversies going on. And I think it was against that backdrop that I think Edward and Sophie wanted to do their own thing very, very quietly.
According to the book, Prince Edward, a biography, the Queen, soon after meeting Sophie in the early 1990s, noted, "You wouldn't notice her in a crowd." However, the Queen and Sophie became close, and she spent a lot of time at the palace apartments long before she and Edward were engaged. After 6 years of dating, the couple decided to get married when they were both 34 years old.
Could you give us some idea how you actually asked the question?
Ooh.
Well, I spoke it. So, no, I managed to take her completely by surprise. She had no idea that it was coming, and which was what I really wanted to do. I mean, the trouble is everybody always speculating always made it very difficult. Every time there was another round of speculation, I had to go very quiet again, so...
Did you say yes immediately?
I was slightly stunned for a minute, and then I suddenly realised I should actually answer the question, so then I said yes. I said, yes, please.
What kind of wedding are you planning?
A family one, hopefully. So, I mean, there's no such thing as a private wedding, but I hope that it'll be predominantly a family wedding.
Well, the wedding was a slightly more low-key affair. It was held at St George's, Windsor. I think there was a feeling, this was a period of great controversy with the royal family. There have been several royal divorces and separations, and I think they felt that they wanted to have their own much more private wedding in a place which is very close to the royal family's heart, in Windsor.
What's the thinking, sir, behind the wish to have it at St George's Chapel in Windsor?
I don't know. I just always have enjoyed St George's. It's and Windsor especially, and it's just a wonderful setting. It's a glorious piece of architecture, and it's somewhere slightly different.
But are you hoping for a slightly less public, lower-key wedding than others?
Yes, I think so. I think so. That's not going to be deeply unpopular.
You were nodding very emphatically then, Miss Richard.
Yes.
Why?
Well, I think getting married is a very personal thing. I mean, naturally there's going to be more interest in us than there would be in other people, but it is a personal matter, and it's a family matter.
What is it that makes you get along so well?
I don't know. We just do, really. I mean, it's just...
I think we share a number of interests. We laugh a lot. We have a great friendship.
Yeah.
Rather than receiving a dukedom, Edward was named the Earl of Wessex after his marriage in 1999. According to the Sunday Telegraph, Edward was drawn to the name after watching the 1998 film Shakespeare in Love, in which a minor character with that title was played by Colin Firth.
I fancy tobacco has a future. We will not stay there long, 3 or 4 years.
Why me?
It was your eyes. No, your lips.
once stated that the Queen talks to Sophie in a way that she used to talk to Princess Margaret. Sophie and Edward are a reliable couple who often turn up to royal events and provide little scandal. The pair live as low-profile a life as modern royals can.
Edward and Sophie are quite good at distancing themselves from drama, from any fallouts, whether that's Prince Harry, Prince William, or anything else. And when asked about it, they kind of say, that's not really our area. We try to stay out of that, focus on their family, and focus on, being working royals.
In 2001, Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, was airlifted to hospital from her home in Bagshot Park, Surrey, by Thames Valley Air Ambulance after she suffered a potentially life-threatening ectopic pregnancy. The Duchess has become its royal patron and said in a statement, having personally benefited from its expert crew in 2001, the Countess knows only too well every day anyone in the community could be in urgent need of the organisation's vital emergency service. Edward and Sophie went on to have 2 children together, Lady Louise Windsor, born on the 8th of November 2003, and James, Viscount Severn, born on the 17th of December 2007.
Well, Sophie, I think, was a change from previous royal births because she chose to have the children born in a National Health Hospital. I think, all the way through, they've had a very sure touch about what works well with the public. They're very low-key people. They didn't want titles to their children. They felt that would, or at least they wanted to leave them to make a choice. And in many ways, she is rather like Princess Anne, the sense of getting on with the job, not making a fuss, and really putting duty above everything else.
Louise was delivered by emergency caesarean section due to placental abruption. Louise was transferred to a neonatal unit in St George's Hospital, Tooting, London. After a week, Sophie and her daughter were reunited.
Our baby girl has recovered well enough that she can come here to join Sophie, which is fantastic. And it's been quite an emotional moment, as you can probably imagine. 2 other things I want to say, which is, first of all, obviously to thank the medical teams, especially the neonatal unit in St George's, who've just looked after our daughter fantastically well over the last week and have been absolutely brilliant. And for the team here at Frimley, who are now going to carry on and look after her, and the way they've been working together. This has been a fantastic day in our lives, a day of great relief, great joy, and it's difficult really to explain what it is to be together as a family for the first time. Just wonderful.
Lady Louise was born with a rare eye condition, esotropia, for which she had an unsuccessful operation at just 18 months to correct her vision.
Esotropia is a condition which sees the eyes sit inward, so the pupil of the eye sits in the corner and doesn't face straight. So she had this when she was born, had this for actually most of her childhood, but had an operation to correct it so her eyes would face forward when she was 10 years old.
Despite their family's royal status, Edward and Sophie have attempted to give their children as normal a childhood as possible, opting to keep them out of the limelight wherever they can.
Lady Louise Windsor loves horseback riding and rode in the Queen's 90th birthday celebrations, and she's also taking up Prince Philip's love of carriage driving, something that he was known to love all his life, so she does that as well. And James really likes fly fishing, apparently. I mean, they're all very outdoorsy, aren't they? And he's also been spotted driving a Land Rover.
Louise gained admission into St Andrews University, where she will study English literature. Much like most of the public, the family were locked down in their home in Surrey during the coronavirus pandemic.
It's even more difficult when they're online because you can't really look over their shoulder and see what they're doing, and you're no longer in communication with the teaching. So it is very difficult, and trying to. I mean, I have to say, half term came at just about the right time because it was very interesting. The frustrations that were beginning to, I reckon we weren't the only family to have experienced that. And I really really mind for people who've got children who are younger than ours, who really don't understand what they're doing and what this is all about, and why they should be, watching a computer. And so, and that's been really difficult. So, again, I count our blessings that, we're lucky where we are. So chalk and cheese. So one of them who actually, delightfully loves school. Is just terribly frustrated not being able to go to school. The oldest one, so Louise, yeah. But she had her GCSEs interrupted last year, so we went through that whole pain of just, having all that suddenly taken away from you. So she sort of struggles a bit with the online learning because she much prefer to be with everybody else. And I think it's very interesting that social bit, that dependence on your peers for many things, I think is really important. And our younger one, who's frankly thinks that being at home and online is fantastic. But online learning is, as I think we've all discovered, is not necessarily all it's cracked up to be, and it's partly to do with your own ability to be able to engage with the technology, but also it's about who's giving you the lessons and their ability to be able to engage. And again, if you've got the technology, we've had two very different experiences, and we've got one who's now really excited about the fact that schools are reopening. One's now in deep depression.
As a teenager, Edward completed the Bronze, Silver and Gold Duke of Edinburgh Awards and took pleasure in partaking in all the activities required to complete the awards. He enjoyed the activities so much that he would leave a journal on the side of his bed that described his thoughts and feelings while completing the awards. Edward has remained committed to the Duke of Edinburgh Award throughout his life. The award was founded by Prince Philip in 1956 and helps young people build their confidence and develop key life skills to reach their full potential. It is one of Edward's father's greatest legacies.
Started by his former headmaster, Kurt Hahn, who, when it was rolled out beyond Galdenstone, came to my father and said, would you get involved in this? And my father got Lord Hunt involved in helping to shape how it would roll out, and that was, of course, was one of his geniuses, really.
Philip was very proud of his son's passion for the award, and it made sense that he wanted his son to take on this historic title.
Well, no, I'd known about it before that because we had a sort of version of the award at school, but that was the principles were the same. It was non-competitive, and all you had to do, you had to choose one event in running, one event in throwing, and one event in jumping, and you got an award. So that was the basis was there. When he came, that was what he really wanted to revive as a county badge scheme. But when we put the originating committee together, people thought, well, perhaps we ought to broaden this a bit. So that's why we added in voluntary service and skills and an expedition, as well as a fitness section. So it became a 4-section scheme.
After Charles became king in 2023, he awarded Edward with the title of Duke of Edinburgh on his 59th birthday. Quite a birthday present. He's now patron of the Duke of Edinburgh Award and feels honoured to follow in his father's footsteps.
Congratulations to each and every award holder and achiever here today. This event is to celebrate and to recognise your achievements.
And that's the great thing. At the end of the day, these young people end up with a certificate and a badge that recognises the achievements that they have done. And that standard is not just in the United Kingdom, it's in 114 countries around the world. They are part of an international standard, and it's about your character, it's about you as a person. Every award is very personal to that particular person. It reflects their interests, their background, their circumstances, their passions. Hopefully passions that will drive them on throughout their life.
It's such a shame that good news and especially good news about young people, is so often forgotten in this world. And all we ever read about are the few rotten eggs. And yet there are so many young people out there trying their damnedest, trying their hardest to be able to get on and to build constructive lives, and they never really get recognised for it.
The award is now operating in more than 130 countries. Edward has since been aiming to accomplish the charity's long-term ambition of ensuring that any young person, no matter their background, has the opportunity to complete the award. Prince Philip died on the 9th of April 2021.
It was always his humour that came through, and the twinkle in his eye, and he was very, very good at it.
Naturally somewhat biased, but I think our children have done rather well under very different and difficult and demanding circumstances. I hope we can be forgiven for feeling rather proud of them. And I'm also encouraged to see what a good start the next generation is making.
And, you know, it means so much to so many people here. And it's the same for those who lived and worked at Balmoral and Sandringham. You know, he's, you know, for all those past and present, you know, it means a huge, huge amount to them. Very personal. They all have their own personal memories and stories, and where hearts go out to all of them as well. I'll remember my father for in a number of different ways, both in what he's done in his public life, for all the organisations that he's supported and influenced. I mean, obviously, as my father,
Edward remembers his father fondly, and their joint connection to the Duke of Edinburgh Award is a special passion that will forever bind their legacies.
The reign of Elizabeth II comes to a close after 70 years at the age of 96. Her son Charles is now king.
On behalf of all my family, I can only offer the most sincere and heartfelt thanks for your condolences and support. And to my darling Mama, as you begin your last great journey to join my dear late Papa, I want simply to say this: thank you.
Queen Elizabeth II died on the 8th of September 2022. She was Britain's longest reigning monarch and was a steady symbol in many people's lives. Her death shook the nation. Edward and Sophie spent nearly every weekend with Edward's parents, which allowed Queen Elizabeth to enjoy her grandchildren, Lady Louise and James, Viscount Severn, before her death.
And actually, in the last months of the Queen's life, Sophie, the Countess of Wessex, as she was then, spent a lot of time with the Queen. And so, yeah, the two of them are definitely favourites in the royal family.
Edward stated that the death of his mum, Queen Elizabeth II, left an unimaginable void in all our lives. He also described the pleasure he takes in his children enjoying the places and activities that their grandparents enjoyed so much. Prince Edward is certainly a much-loved royal. He is charming, well-respected, ambitious, and dedicated to his family. He has moulded himself into a great emblem of the Windsors, and he performs his royal duties uncomplaining with care, dedication and passion. No wonder Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh, was considered to be his parents' favourite child.